Don't skip this one. This story starts with humiliation but ends with a truth so powerful it changes everything. Settle in, you'll feel every moment. The first disrespectful thing I heard was my sister's voice slicing through the room like a blade. "Excuse me, everyone, I need your attention. There's something you all should know about my sister." It was sharp enough to stop forks midair. Conversations froze. Even the old wall clock above Grandma's fireplace seemed to hold its breath. But I didn't react, not the way she expected. I simply placed my glass on the side table and folded my hands in my lap, calm enough that my stillness felt almost suspicious. I'd learned long ago that if you stay quiet at the right moment, people start looking at the person making the noise. What she didn't know, what she never imagined, was that I already had something in my purse that changed everything. A tiny tucked-away card. A number I'd called the night before. But I kept my purse zipped, my face steady and my breathing even. It was 7:14 p.m. Grandma's birthday dinner. The house smelled like roasted chicken and lemon cleaner, the way it always did when family gatherings meant too much to sweat the small things. The living room lights cast a warm glow on everyone's faces, but the moment my sister raised her chin, something cold moved through the space. An unease. A tightening. My sister stood by the fireplace like she'd rehearsed the position. Back straight, shoulders squared, one foot slightly out like she wanted to look taller. She dressed well tonight too. Too well. A little dark blue dress that she said she bought on sale, though anyone could see it was brand new. Her lipstick was applied with the kind of precision she used only when she needed to perform. I could feel eyes drifting toward me, curious, confused, maybe even worried. I smiled at a few of them gently, the way a woman my age should. 70% kindness, 30%, don't rush to conclusions. My sister cleared her throat dramatically, soaking in the attention. "This won't be easy to say," she began, placing a hand dramatically against her chest. "But honesty is important in this family. And I can't watch her lie anymore." A small murmur rippled across the room like someone had dropped a pebble into a lake. I took a slow breath, noticing the little things. The scrape of a chair leg behind me, the way Grandma's dog lifted his head from the rug, sensing something wrong. My heartbeat wasn't fast. It was steady. Purposeful. I knew exactly how this night would unfold even if she didn't. Especially because she didn't. Two men were standing near the doorway, men I hadn't seen before. At least not in person. They wore plain jackets, stiff in the shoulders, and shoes too new to be casual visitors. Their expressions carried a mix of discomfort and forced confidence. The kind men wear when they're not sure if they're stepping into dinner or disaster. My sister gestured toward them with a theatrical sweep of her arm. "These gentlemen are here because they've been investigating her company," she said. "And they found something everyone deserves to know." Grandma's fork clattered onto her plate. My aunt whispered something into her husband's ear. My cousin Paige leaned forward like she didn't want to miss a single breath of what came next. I kept my eyes on my sister and only her. "Calm. Quiet." That calm unsettled her, I saw it. She blinked twice fast like she was recalibrating. She'd expected tears or stuttering or begging. Something dramatic. But not this. Not me sitting there like I'd been waiting for this moment to arrive. One of the men cleared his throat, shifting on his feet. "Ma'am," he said to my sister, "perhaps." "No," she cut in sharply. "Tell them what you told me." He looked uncomfortable. That alone made several relatives raise their eyebrows. He glanced at me then only for a second, and his eyes held something different. Not accusation. Not certainty. Something more like confusion. My sister didn't notice. She was too caught up in her victory. She pressed on. "She's been lying to all of you," she continued, her voice growing louder. "About her business. About her success. About everything." Her words echoed off the walls. I felt them hit one by one, but they didn't bruise the way she intended. Years ago they might have. Not now. Not tonight. I straightened my back slightly, not enough to challenge her directly but enough to say without words, "I'm not afraid of you anymore." My daughter, standing near the hallway, shot me a quick look, half worried, half curious. I gave her a tiny nod. Just enough to reassure her. Just enough to say, "Let me handle this." The men stepped a little farther into the room, glancing at each other as if silently debating who should speak. My sister stared at them expectantly, tapping her nails against her glass in sharp little clicks. It was the sound she always made when she felt in control. Go on, she urged them. Tell them what you found. The first man inhaled slowly. We were asked to investigate some financial irregularities, he said carefully. But nothing, my sister snapped. Tell them the truth. The second man stepped forward then, looking directly at me for the first time. His eyes lingered a second too long. Enough that my sister noticed. What? She barked. Why are you looking at her like that? He didn't answer her. Instead he looked back down at his clipboard, flipping a page nervously. The entire room watched him. Even the dog sat up. My sister pressed her lips together, swallowing a growing panic. I saw it starting, the hairline cracks forming across the surface of her confidence. She masked it quickly with another dramatic sigh. You know, she said to the room, this isn't easy for me. But someone has to be brave enough to stop her from lying to the family. That line made my cousin Paige shift uncomfortably. Brave? She whispered under her breath, just loud enough for me to catch. My sister heard it too. She glared. I decided to speak then, just once. Calm, level, gentle. Before you continue, dear, I said quietly, are you sure you know what you're doing? Her head snapped toward me. Don't start pretending you're innocent, she hissed. Not tonight. I nodded slowly, almost sympathetically. I'm not pretending anything. Her face flushed. A dangerous red. The red she got whenever she realized I wasn't playing the role she assigned me. The detectives shifted again. The one holding the clipboard wiped his palms on his pants. A small detail but telling. Men who are sure of what they're about to say don't wipe their hands. Men who expect trouble do. My sister noticed none of this. She was too focused on making her speech. Too eager to pull the spotlight back onto herself. She lifted her chin. I've always tried to keep this family together, she declared. But she's been hiding things. Serious things. The room was thick with tension now, heavy in the air. A few relatives exchanged glances. Grandma held onto the arm of her chair as if bracing for a storm. I watched everything. Every face. Every shift. Every blink. I took it all in, steady as a still pond. And in the quiet center of my calm I thought of the card in my purse. The number I'd dialed. The soft voice on the other end saying, we'll handle it from here, ma'am. But none of that needed to be spoken yet. Not here. Not now. My sister took a step toward me, emboldened by her growing audience. So, she said, forcing a tremble into her voice, would you like to tell them yourself? Or should I let these men explain what they found? I tilted my head slightly. If you want a moment alone to think this through, I murmured gently, I'm happy to. No, she snapped, louder this time. You don't get to twist this. Not again. The room went silent. A heavy, expectant silence. She turned toward the detectives. Tell them, she ordered, voice breaking. Tell them everything. But before they could respond, the front door swung open. Everyone turned. And in walked the one person my sister prayed wouldn't show up. Her face drained of color. I remained perfectly still. And before a single question could be asked, the newcomer said my sister's name in a tone that froze her where she stood. I rose from my chair slowly, calmly, my heartbeat steady, my breath even. This was the moment everything began to unravel. The newcomer said my sister's name again, firmer this time, and the entire room shifted its attention toward the doorway. I stayed where I was, halfway rising from my chair, caught in that fragile space between moving and freezing. My sister's lips parted ever so slightly, like a child caught doing something she swore she had nothing to do with. The newcomer, Detective Harris, the senior one I'd spoken to on the phone the night before, stepped fully into the room. His presence didn't fill the space with noise. It filled it with certainty. Quiet certainty. The kind that makes people stand straighter and rethink their stories. My sister swallowed hard. Her jaw tightened. I lowered myself back into the chair slowly, pretending to sit because I felt weak, not because I was carefully calculating where to be when the truth began its slow, steady leak into the open. Detective Harris nodded toward me politely, then shifted his gaze to the two younger men my sister had dragged in earlier. You too, he said, voice calm. I need a word. They looked like schoolboys caught in the hallway doing something they shouldn't. The taller one cleared his throat and muttered something about not realizing you were assigned to this. Harris didn't respond. He merely tilted his head toward the kitchen. The three of them stepped away, leaving the rest of us in a strange, suspended silence. My sister's eyes darted around the room like she was searching for an exit that didn't exist. Her confidence, the bravado she carried like perfume, was slipping fast. A woman like her, one who lived on the applause of others, didn't know how to handle uncertainty. I watched the back of her neck flush a blotchy red. That always happened when she felt the world tilting in a direction she couldn't control. Everyone else stood awkwardly, shuffling, adjusting plates, whispering. Grandma's dog brushed against my ankle, sensing tension the way animals do. I rested a hand on his head, more for myself than for him. My niece Emma tugged at my sleeve. "Auntie," she whispered, "why does Mom look so scared?" I leaned closer. "Because she doesn't know what's going to happen next." Her eyes widened, but before she could ask anything, my sister snapped, "Emma, go sit down." Her voice trembled, thin and sharp. Emma stepped back quietly. I let the moment sit. Then I said gently but loud enough to carry, "There's no need to raise your voice at her." My sister blinked at me, startled, like she wasn't expecting pushback. She always expected me to shrink. That was her first mistake tonight. I rose again, this time fully, smoothing my blouse as if preparing to refill a drink. "Would anyone like more tea?" I asked. It seemed absurdly calm given the situation, but calmness is a powerful weapon when someone is unraveling beside you. A few relatives nodded automatically, more for something to do than because they wanted tea. I walked into the kitchen, feeling their eyes follow me, sensing my sister's stare burning into my back. The detectives' voices floated from the far end of the kitchen. Low, tense, controlled. I didn't eavesdrop, though I could have. Instead, I busied myself with the teapot, listening to the gentle clink of cups, grounding myself in the simple ritual of serving. My hands were steady. Steadier than they'd been in years. When I returned to the living room, serving tea to those who accepted it, I caught my sister watching me with a look I recognized too well. A mix of resentment and fear. Not fear of me, but fear of being seen for who she was beneath the layers she wore like armor. People were whispering now. Little observations. "Did you see the taller one's face when she interrupted him? He didn't seem sure about what he was saying. They don't look like they're here for her at all." My sister heard every word, and her breathing grew uneven. I sat back down in my chair. I didn't gloat. That wasn't my role tonight. But I didn't comfort her either. She'd chosen this battlefield. A few minutes later, the kitchen voices grew louder. Still not enough to hear details, but enough to sense friction. A tense pause followed, the kind that prickles the air. Then the footsteps came. 3 sets. Slow. Measured. The detectives returned. The younger two avoided eye contact with the crowd. Detective Harris, however, looked directly at my sister with a calm that bordered on unsettling. "Ma'am," he said to her, "I need to clarify a few things with you." Her hands flew to her hips, the way they always did when she felt accused. "I've told you everything," she said too quickly. She jabbed a finger at the younger detectives, explained the situation. Harris didn't look at them. He kept his focus squarely on her. "Actually," he said, "they didn't." A soft murmur moved through the room. My sister's face stiffened. "What are you talking about?" He glanced around the room, then spoke in a tone that was polite, but firm enough to steady everyone's attention. "Perhaps we should speak privately." "No," she said immediately, shaking her head. "We're not hiding anything here. She pointed at me, is the one deceiving people. I want them all to hear this." I folded my hands, remaining silent. This wasn't my moment to speak. She'd made sure I didn't have one earlier. Now she insisted on an audience. Let her have it. Harris sighed softly, then nodded. "If that's your preference." The taller detective shifted uncomfortably. The shorter one rubbed the back of his neck. Harris ignored both of them. He stepped closer to my sister. "The documents you provided us," he said carefully, "the ones you claimed came from your sister's business, they're incomplete." "Incomplete?" she repeated, her voice thinning. "What does that mean?" "It means," Harris continued, choosing his words with the precision of a surgeon, "that several pages are missing. Critical pages." He stared at him, blinking. I gave you everything I had." He held her gaze a moment longer than necessary. Then he said quietly, "Are you sure about that?" A visible tremor went through her. Aunt Margaret leaned forward slightly. What pages? She asked timidly. Harris didn't answer her. He kept his focus tight, controlled. My sister's voice wavered. Why are you questioning me? I'm the one who brought this forward. I'm the one trying to protect the family. His eyebrows rose, not in skepticism but in cautious disbelief. Usually when someone is protecting their family, he said, they don't omit key details. The shorter detective finally spoke up, voice uncertain. We also found inconsistencies in the statements you gave us. My sister froze. Absolutely froze. Inconsistencies, she repeated, her tone cracking. What inconsistencies? The taller detective cleared his throat. Dates that don't match. Names that weren't verified. And, your signature appears altered on one of the forms. Gasps threaded through the room. My sister's knees seemed to weaken. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. I wasn't joyous. I wasn't triumphant. I simply watched. Observed. Tension pooled like rainwater in the room. Grandma finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp. Honey, why were you signing things for this investigation? My sister opened her mouth but no sound came out. She looked like a woman grasping for a rope that wasn't there. Detective Harris stepped closer. We'll need to review the full set of documents you claimed to receive from your sister's business contacts. He paused. We need the originals. The originals, she echoed. Yes, he said. The ones you told us were mailed to you. Her eyes flickered, fast, panicked, betraying something she didn't want anyone to see. Harris noticed. So did everyone else. She stammered. I don't have them anymore. Why not? He asked. Her throat bobbed. They were misplaced. Misplaced. Harris repeated, his tone calm but firm. All of them. I don't know, she whispered. Maybe they were thrown out. Thrown out. Important documents. Shredded by accident. Misplaced. She'd forgotten that lies need memory, and her memory had holes. I leaned forward slightly. Not enough to interrupt. Enough to watch the moment she realized the ground beneath her was giving way. Detective Harris studied her face. Ma'am, if you made decisions based on incomplete or altered paperwork, we need to understand why. Her eyes darted to me. She's trying to make me look bad, she whispered desperately, pointing at me. She's manipulating this. I didn't flinch. I haven't said a word, I said softly. Her lips trembled. You always make me the villain. No, I replied gently. I don't have to. The room fell completely silent. Detective Harris cleared his throat. Let's step outside, he said to her. Just to clarify a few details. No, she said again, shaking. No, everyone should hear this. He paused, then nodded once. Then let me be direct. The more we examine this situation, the less it appears to involve your sister, and the more it appears to involve you. A collective inhale swept the room. My sister swayed. Involved to me. Yes, Harris said quietly. Her secrets, the ones she'd spent years burying, were rising to the surface in slow, painful cracks. And the night was far from over. I didn't look away from her door as it clicked shut behind her. That soft, careful sound told me more than any argument ever could. She was rattled, trying to hold herself together, pretending she still had control. And as the hallway fell silent, the truth settled over me like a slow, steady breath. I wasn't the only one who'd been taking notes all these years. She'd been keeping secrets. Too many. And they were finally pushing their way through the cracks. I stood for a moment, letting the quiet stretch, listening to the faint hum of the old AC unit kicking on near the stairwell. The house always shifted in the late afternoon, right around 4. The wood popped, the vents sighed, and every sound carried farther than it should. It made it impossible for anyone to hide much of anything. Especially now. I walked back toward the kitchen, the air smelling faintly of the lemon cleaner I'd used earlier. My hands were still a little shaky, not from fear anymore but from something sharper, anticipation. I knew better than to act impulsively. At 66 you learn the value of patience the hard way. You also learn when something is sitting right under your nose, waiting to be discovered. I stopped at the counter where she'd left her purse earlier, though she'd snatched it up before storming off. But she'd forgotten one thing. A small, folded receipt tucked under the corner of the tissue box. A habit of hers, leaving clutter in odd places. She never noticed the trail she created. I did. I pulled the receipt free. It wasn't from a store I recognized, but the date caught my eye immediately. 2 days ago. The same day she'd been out meeting a friend. The same day she'd come home with that smug grin, as if she'd put something in motion she thought I'd never see coming. I unfolded it slowly, the thin paper crackling in my fingers. The print wasn't clear at first, but as I brought it closer to the light, the words sank in. Document duplication and notarization. My stomach tightened. She hadn't just been stirring trouble, she'd been preparing something official. I leaned against the counter, letting the weight of that settle. What would she need notarized? And why hide the receipt unless she knew it was something I'd never approve of? The refrigerator hummed behind me, grounding me. I had to think. Carefully. I reached for my phone, intending to call the number on the receipt, but stopped. I could already picture how that conversation would go. Polite voice, vague answers, no information without proof of identity. Instead, I slipped the receipt into my pocket. I'd visit the place directly. People are always more talkative in person. The moment I straightened up, a faint tapping noise came from down the hallway. Soft. Repetitive. Not quite human movement, but not random either. I walked toward it, my sandals whispering on the hardwood floor. As I approached her room, the tapping stopped. I didn't go inside. I wasn't about to violate the very boundaries she tried to trample over me. But I did look at the door carefully. A sliver of light shone from under it, though she'd left the room earlier in the dark. Someone had turned on a lamp. Or something had been left open. I stepped closer, pressing my hand against the door, feeling the faint warmth. That told me she'd only been out of the room for a minute or two. She'd left in a rush. I lowered myself slightly, ignoring the stiffness in my knees, and looked under the gap. The angle was small, but enough to see the edge of a manila folder lying halfway out of a drawer. And scattered next to it, several sheets of paper. My pulse quickened. She wasn't just keeping secrets. She was collecting something. I stayed there a moment longer, thinking. If she had copies of documents, if she'd notarized anything, then these papers might be the originals or related to whatever she was setting up behind my back. But I didn't touch them. I wasn't going to stoop to her level. Instead, I walked back to the living room, grabbed my sweater from the chair, and stepped outside. The late afternoon sun had already begun to dip, casting a soft orange glow across the yard. There was a light breeze, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass from the neighbors. It felt grounding. Necessary. I headed down the driveway, receipt in hand. The copy center was only a 10-minute walk away. I'd passed it countless times but never had a reason to go inside. Today I did. Each step seemed to steady me. My mind cleared, sharpening like a lens, focusing on a single point. She thought she was ahead. She thought she had the power. But she didn't know what I'd overheard earlier. She didn't know what I'd already pieced together. She also didn't know I had something she'd never expect: patience and the ability to observe quietly. It's amazing what a calm exterior hides. The pavement was warm beneath my feet, and a few dried leaves skittered across the sidewalk as the wind nudged them along. When I reached the copy center, the door chimed as I pushed it open. The young woman at the counter looked up, offering a tired smile. Afternoon. Need help with something? I stepped closer, setting the receipt down gently. I need to know what this was for. She glanced at it, recognition flickering across her face far too quickly for my comfort. Oh, she said quietly. That was earlier this week. The woman needed official copies made. She was in a hurry. I kept my voice steady. What kind of documents? She hesitated, tapping her fingers, weighing whether to answer. I could see it clearly. Uncertainty, caution, the desire not to get involved. I'm not asking for specifics, I said. Just the type. She exhaled. Property agreements. And a statement of complaint. My heart sunk for a moment, then steadied. Property. Complaint. That explained the extra drawer opening and the folder under her door. She was planning something bigger than gossip or embarrassment. Did she say why? I asked. No. But she looked angry. Determined. I nodded slowly. That sounds like her. The woman shifted awkwardly. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. That's more than enough, I replied. I left the store, my mind spinning. Property agreements? What could she possibly want to change? Everything was already divided fairly and she'd agreed to it years ago. Unless she thought she found a loophole. Unless she planned to accuse me of something serious. A complaint against me. The walk home felt heavier even though my steps were steady. I replayed every recent argument, every look she'd given me, every comment she'd made behind closed doors. She was building a case. But why now? When I reached the house, the porch light had already come on. I hadn't turned it on. She must have done it, probably to make herself look considerate, or to mask the frantic pacing I could see through the front window. Her shadow moved back and forth, sharp and erratic. I stepped inside and the smell of her perfume hit me immediately, too strong, meaning she'd reapplied it recently to hide the scent of her sweating nerves. She stood in the living room, arms crossed, pretending she wasn't waiting for me. "You were gone a while," she said. "Just a walk," I replied. Her eyes narrowed slightly, then dropped to my pocket. I could tell she was trying to see what I'd brought back. "You seem nervous," I added calmly. "I'm not nervous," she snapped. That quick, defensive tone, it told me everything. I hung my sweater on the chair, pretending not to notice her inspecting every movement I made. The room felt tighter, the air charged with unspoken accusations. "I found something earlier," I said, keeping my voice soft, controlled. Her shoulders stiffened. "What did you find?" I let the question hang, watching her face pale by the smallest degree. "Funny thing about secrets," I said. "They don't stay buried long." Her hands curled slightly at her sides, a subtle tremor giving away her panic. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. But I didn't answer. Not yet. Not until she pushed herself just a little further. Not until her own guilt began to expose itself. And it was starting. Right there, in the center of that quiet living room, her secrets were beginning to crack wide open. And she didn't even realize the evidence wasn't hidden nearly as well as she thought. Right there, in the center of that quiet living room, her secrets were beginning to crack wide open. And she didn't even realize the evidence wasn't hidden nearly as well as she thought. I could see it in the way she shifted her weight, the way her eyes darted toward her room, as if the papers inside were burning a hole straight through the drawer. She didn't know what I knew yet. And part of me wanted to let her stew in that tension a little longer. The truth has a way of softening people or shattering them. With her, I wasn't sure which direction it would go. Before either of us could say another word, there was a knock at the door. Sharp, firm, unmistakably official. My breath caught, not in fear but in something colder, calmer. Timing like this never happens by accident. She froze. I watched her face drain of color as the knock came again, louder this time. She turned toward me, her voice trembling just enough for me to hear it. Are you expecting someone?" "No," I said simply. Her breath hitched. And for the first time that day she looked truly afraid. I walked toward the door, each step steady, measured. The hardwood was cool under my feet, grounding me. When I opened it, 2 detectives stood on the porch. The same pair who had shown up days earlier. The same ones she had pretended were here for my lies and games. Except this time their expressions were different. Sharper. More focused. "Ma'am," the taller one said with a nod. "We need to speak with both of you." I stepped aside without hesitation. She, on the other hand, took a step back, pressing herself against the arm of the sofa. The detectives noticed. They always do. "Everything all right?" the shorter detective asked, his eyes shifting between us. "Of course," she said quickly, her voice breaking on the last word. "They didn't buy it. No one would." The taller detective opened a folder, thin but purposeful. "We've been reviewing some discrepancies involving a complaint that was filed recently." Her hand flew to her chest. "Oh, a complaint?" "Yes," he said. "Filed under your name." She blinked. "Wine." He nodded once. "We have some questions about the information you provided." The silence that followed stretched long enough to make the room feel smaller. I stayed quiet, watching her unravel inch by inch. She opened her mouth twice before any sound came out. I don't know what you mean. I didn't do anything wrong." The detective didn't argue. He simply stepped farther inside, motioning for us to sit. I took the armchair. She stayed standing. The shorter detective glanced around the room, his eyes resting on the faint smear of dust on the floor near the hallway, exactly where she'd been rummaging earlier. "We'd like to take a look at the documents you submitted," he said. "We were given copies, but we need to verify the originals." She swallowed hard. "The originals?" "Yes, ma'am." Her eyes flicked toward the hallway in a movement so quick most people wouldn't notice. Detectives always notice. The taller one followed her glance. Do you have them here? No, she said too fast. I could feel my pulse steady, slow, almost soothing. This was the moment the ground beneath her began to shift. We can wait while you get them, the detective said calmly. She stayed rooted to the spot. I don't think I know where they are. His eyebrow lifted just slightly. You filed a formal complaint. You notarized it. You submitted property paperwork. I'm sure you know where they're kept. Her breath came out shaky. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to be taken seriously. The two detectives shared a quick look. One of those silent exchanges that said everything. Someone lying. Someone hiding something. Someone cornered. I watched her flounder. And I realized in that moment she wasn't nearly as confident or prepared as she wanted everyone to believe. She never had been. The taller detective closed the folder gently. We'll ask again. Do you have the documents here in the house? This time she didn't speak. She just stared at the carpet, her breathing rapid and uneven. That was when the shorter detective turned to me. Ma'am, have you seen anything concerning? Anything that might help clarify what's happening? She snapped her head up, panicked. Don't you dare. I held up my hand. I haven't touched anything of hers, I said calmly. But I've noticed she's been agitated. And she's been hiding things. Papers. Receipts. Conversations on the phone she ends the second I walk into a room. Her face twisted, half rage, half desperation. You're lying. The detective didn't even flinch. Ma'am, please sit down. I don't want to sit. Then stop shouting, he said, firm enough that she finally shut her mouth. The taller detective cleared his throat. We need to be transparent with both of you. There is an issue with the complaint you filed, ma'am. Several inconsistencies. And when we reached out to verify certain statements, they didn't align with what we were given. She sank slowly onto the sofa, her knees buckling. I didn't think it would get this far. It always gets this far, the detective said quietly. I watched her carefully. The fear on her face wasn't the fear of someone who made a simple mistake. It was the fear of someone realizing their web had tangled around them. We will need to search the property, the shorter detective said. Only the areas related to the documentation in question. She looked at him in disbelief. Search? You can't. It's standard procedure. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No. Her reaction was sharp, immediate, almost too revealing. If they hadn't already suspected she was hiding something, they certainly did now. The taller detective stood. We can begin with the living room and hallway. She let out a sound, something between a plea and a gasp. I stood quietly, moving aside to let them pass. The shorter detective opened the hallway door. And that was when everything changed. From where I stood, I could see it. The faint trail of a manila folder barely pushed under her bedroom door. Earlier it had been inside. Now it had shifted closer to the hallway. She must have moved it in a hurry before I got home, not noticing it hadn't gone all the way back in. The detective noticed too. He stopped. Crouched slightly. Looked up at her. Is that yours? She didn't answer. Ma'am, he repeated, is that your folder? Her lips trembled. I don't know. He reached for the door handle. She lunged forward. No. Don't touch. Too late. He opened the door. Inside the lamp was on. Papers were scattered across the bed. The drawer was open. And sitting right on top, the original property documents. And her statement. And even worse, scribbled notes in her handwriting that contradicted nearly every accusation she'd filed. She let out a strangled cry. That's private. Not anymore, the detective said calmly. The taller detective flipped through the papers slowly. These notes, they're dated before your complaint. And they show you knew the information was false. She went pale as chalk. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, relief, disappointment, something softer I couldn't name. After all these years, after all the bitterness, after all the efforts she'd made to tear me down, this was what her secret amounted to. A fragile lie. One that only survived because she assumed no one would ever question her. The shorter detective stepped back into the hallway. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. Her eyes widened. What? Why me? Why are you asking for me? You filed a fraudulent report, he said gently but firmly. And you attempted to manipulate property agreements. That's serious. She shook her head in disbelief, looking from him to me as if searching for a lifeline. This isn't fair. This isn't how it's supposed to go. But it was fair. And she knew it. The taller detective approached her. We can talk more at the station. But right now we need to take your statement formally. She looked at me one last time, her voice breaking apart. You did this. No, I said softly. You did. Her shoulders slumped, her fight gone. The detectives guided her toward the door, their tone calm but firm. Just before stepping outside, she turned her head slightly as if she wanted to say something. Or maybe apologize. Or maybe blame me again. I couldn't tell. She said nothing. The door closed behind them. And for the first time in a long while the house was quiet. Not tense. Not strained. Not waiting for the next argument. Just quiet. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The truth had come out. But the consequences were only beginning. The house stayed quiet for a long moment after the door closed behind them, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful yet, but hollow, adjusting, waiting to decide what it will be next. I stood there in the center of the living room, staring at the empty doorway, the last faint echo of their footsteps fading down the porch steps. It felt unreal, almost weightless, like the world had paused just to let me finally breathe. But the truth was still settling around me piece by piece. Everything she'd built, every lie, every accusation, every twisted little plan, had crumbled right in front of her. And all I could feel was a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness because she was still my blood. Relief because for once the consequences hadn't landed on me. I walked slowly toward the sofa and sank down, my knees shaking just enough for me to notice. Not from fear. From release. Years of tension loosening all at once. Years of trying to hold the peace. Years of thinking I had to keep every crack sealed so the whole family wouldn't split open. But sometimes things need to collapse. I exhaled long and steady. The late afternoon light slanted through the blinds, striping the carpet in soft gold and muted shadow. It felt like the room was finally showing its real shape, no longer distorted by the constant tug-of-war between us. Everything looked clearer. Simpler. Honest. My phone buzzed on the side table. I reached for it, half expecting more trouble. But it was my niece, her daughter, sending a simple message. Mom, okay? My heart pinched. I typed back, she went with the detectives. They'll explain everything. A moment later, do you want me to come over? I hesitated. Then, not yet. I need some time. She respected that. He always had. I set the phone down and stood again, unable to sit still. My feet carried me toward the hallway almost on instinct, back toward her room. The room that had held all her secrets, all her planning, all the quiet contempt she never admitted out loud. The door was still open from when the detectives searched. The lamp glowed softly in the corner, casting a warm light over the scattered papers they'd left on the bed. Her handwriting covered some of the pages. Sharp, hurried strokes, the kind she used when she was tense or angry. It wasn't the writing of someone thinking clearly. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, the same floral scent she'd worn since we were teenagers. It brought back memories I didn't expect. Some good. Some painful. All complicated. I picked up the property document first. My name was written in the corner, but not in her usual neat script. This was a shaky attempt to mimic my handwriting. A poor attempt. Anyone who knew us would recognize it instantly. I swallowed hard. She'd been willing to falsify something that serious, just to hurt me. But as I scanned the pages, something new caught my eye. A small sticky note clung to the back of the folder, almost overlooked. My fingers trembled slightly as I peeled it off. It wasn't part of the fraud. It was something else. Something raw. Red. I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid you'd hate me if you found out. No signature. No explanation. Just that one sentence. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at it. My heartbeat slowed. What hadn't she known how to tell me? What fear had she been carrying? Was this related to her accusations, or something deeper? I forced myself to keep searching. Under the documents, tucked between two folders, was a sealed envelope with my name on it. My real name, written in her real handwriting. Not forged. Not angry. Just familiar. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, 3 pages folded neatly. My breath caught as I began to read. I know I've made your life harder than it ever needed to be. I know I pushed you away, blamed you, twisted things. It wasn't because I hated you. It was because I hated myself. I blinked, my throat tightening. There were things I never told you. Things I should have said years ago. I was jealous of you, your calm, your patience, the way people trust you. I always felt like you were the one who got the better inheritance because you had the one thing I didn't. Stability. My eyes blurred. I thought if I could expose your flaws, people would finally see you the way I did. But you never broke. And I did. I'm scared. And I don't know how to stop sabotaging myself. I read the letter twice. Maybe 3 times. Each word hit a different corner of my heart. Some sharp, some soft, some bruised. She wasn't just trying to ruin me. She was drowning. Thrashing. Grasping at any rope, twisted or not, that made her feel in control. I folded the letter slowly, holding it between my palms. I didn't excuse her actions. They were cruel. Calculated. Dangerous. But they came from a place more broken than I'd imagined. A place she never let me see. A place she hid behind pride and anger and sharp words. I leaned back, letting the room settle around me. For the first time I didn't feel like I needed revenge. I didn't need to twist the knife. The truth had already done that for me. Life had done that to her. But closure? I needed that. I walked outside onto the porch. The evening air was cooler now, carrying the smell of damp leaves and the soft chirping of crickets. The glow from the streetlights cast long shadows across the yard, making everything look quieter than it felt. I sat on the porch swing, letting it creak beneath me. I had lived with her chaos for so long that the absence of it felt unfamiliar, almost unsettling. But it was a good kind of unsettling. Like taking off a heavy coat after carrying its weight for years. My phone buzzed again. This time it was the taller detective. "We've spoken with her," he said. "She's admitted to filing the false documents. The charges will be processed. She asked us to tell you she's sorry." I closed my eyes. "Did she say anything else?" "Yes. She asked if you found the letter." A lump formed in my throat. "I did. She wanted you to know that she never meant for it to go this far." I nodded even though he couldn't see it. "Thank you for telling me." After we hung up, I stayed outside a while longer, listening to the soft rustling of the trees. Memories drifted in, some bright, some dim, all woven together. She had been my sister, my rival, my burden, my responsibility, and now she was simply human. Deeply flawed, deeply wounded. And for the first time I could see the woman underneath all the bitterness. The scared girl she'd never stopped being. I let out a long breath. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But release. Letting go of the weight. Letting go of the expectation. Letting go of the belief that I could fix her. When I finally stood to go inside, the night had darkened. The house felt different now. Lighter, spacious, honest. I walked through each room slowly, feeling the shift, feeling the quiet clean itself out. By the time I reached my bedroom, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because she was gone, but because I was free. Everything had collapsed, her lies, her plans, her walls. And in that collapse, I finally found myself again. I turned off the last light, letting the darkness settle around me like a soft blanket. And with a steady, unshaken voice, I said aloud the words I needed to hear most. If this story touched you, shocked you, or reminded you of your own strength, subscribe for more dark, emotional stories where the underestimated woman always rises in the end.